theme has been focus on geopolitics. So let me turn to you first, Professor Åsa Rönnelman. And with no offense to our distinguished panelists, our politicians here on the stage, I know that as a scientist you will give us the facts straight and without any spin. So tell me to what extent what you have heard today fits with your perspective when it comes to the most consequential challenges facing the Arctic region today.
Thank you. And I just want to say that I'm speaking here today. This is my own opinions and thoughts, and not as a representative of Rutgers University or the American Geophysical Union, where I hold many volunteer leadership roles. There's no doubt about it that the geopolitical situation in the Arctic right now is very serious and troublesome. But the long-term security issue in the Arctic is not what's happening right now. The long-term security issue of the Arctic is climate change and environmental degradation and pollution. To understand what's going on, we need science. And we may know on a big picture level what is going on, but there's so much still to uncover because we don't know exactly how climate change is going to unfold. We do not know how it's going to play out in the local communities across the Arctic. And to understand that, we need science. We need to collect data on the ground, make observations, analyze them. We need to run models, and we need to collaborate. So it's a paradox at this time when science is so important that science is being under increasing threats of being diminished in the world. And I'm not just speaking, I'm here, I'm an American person, I work at an American university, and the changes we've seen in the last year with the attacks on science in America is absolutely devastating. But we see similar things happening in Europe too, with funds being diverted to military buildup and production of weapons. So at this time, when we need science, science is also under threat.
So you say science is under threat, and we've been talking a lot today about the importance of security in the region. To what extent is it central to understand the role that science can play in making that link between climate change and security risks? And are scientists as well being marginalized? You say the funds are being cut, the research funds, but scientists themselves, are they being listened to by policymakers?
I mean, we see some very alarming trends that we see in our societies today is eroding trust in expert knowledge and evidence. And it's because of spread of misinformation and disinformation. And in the United States, we see it's really coming to a head, where people can't even agree on what is reliable information. What are the truths that we all can agree on? And when we cannot agree on that, that's a huge issue for our security, because how are we going to work together if we cannot agree on the basics? So I see that as a huge problem.
How challenging is it to be a scientist in the US today?
I mean, it's incredibly shocking what's happened in the United States in the last year, with friends losing their jobs, with grants being pulled, with threats of extremely important institutions like the National Center of Atmospheric Research being threatened to be dismantled, one of the most important research institutions in the world that provides models, computing infrastructure, and I don't even know half of what they do. And what's also happening is that we're losing a new generation of scientists because the pathways to become a scientist is becoming more difficult.
All right, Professor, we will obviously follow up on all of this, but let's go to the politicians once again. Foreign Minister Barth Eide. I mean, here we have Professor Rønneldam telling us about the importance of science, but of course from a foreign policy perspective and from a political perspective, you have said today and repeatedly that for you one of the key achievements of the Norwegian chairship of the Arctic Council was keeping it together after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But is the status quo tenable?
No.
Is it in the best interest of the Arctic?
No, status quo is not good. This is a holding operation to keep the apparatus alive as we're waiting for better times, and we work elsewhere to make times better. So status quo is not tenable. That's absolutely true. I would very much like to echo this, that it is also as a government representative, it's incredibly important to strengthen and actually defend the protection of facts and science. And science basically a methodological way to falsify or verify hypotheses in whatever field. And you know, the Enlightenment, which is sort of foundation of modern civilization, was about rulers accepting that although I feel that the world is flat, the scientists tell me that it's round. And at the end of the day, it's okay. It's not woke. You know, it's acceptable. All right, I have to rearrange. This is, you know, when we went from Middle Ages to Enlightenment. And if we're going backwards, we're in deep trouble. For all of us, very, very serious trouble. Because if you don't believe, and of course, scientists never agree on everything. You know, this is, I have a research background myself. But, you know, you agree on certain methods that make certain things more likely and certain things are simply wrong. So I think for the rest of us who are not in science as such, just to accept that there is such a thing, that think there is truth and false, is a foundation for our civilization. And we need to stand up for that, and we need to take the omen for what you see in some countries and make sure it doesn't happen here.
So just briefly speaking about myth and reality, facts and fiction, on a political level, is there a tendency to sometimes accept and tolerate faulty statements? And I have in mind the statements that the US president has made recently with regards to Greenland, saying that it faces a serious threat from Russia and China and their warships swarming around the area. To what extent do you agree with this? Is it right or false? And should you speak up when you see that there are certain falsehoods being told?
Well, I mean, this is a very central issue to the conversations we are having. You know, there is definitely a need to take the security of the Arctic more seriously. And thankfully, there's also several arrangements to enable that. It's NATO. It's including cooperation with the EU, but Arctic countries, 7 out of 8 Arctic countries are NATO. The Kingdom of Denmark has a defense agreement with the US from 1951, which allows for much, much more access to Greenland within the current framework. So what we have done, and this, I mean, I'm proud to say, practically every single one of the 31 NATO members that are not the US has said, on the one hand, we stand by the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland for Greenlanders, and whatever should happen to the Danish realm, if anything should change, it's up to the Greenlanders and the Danes, nobody else. So we stand up for that, not only because of Denmark, Kingdom of Denmark, but because of the principle that you simply don't take other people's land by force. At the same time, we also say collectively that we're more than willing to discuss the real security challenge in the Arctic and work on them together. So that's this double message, has been very explicit from all of us, and I'm talking about the very best friends of the United States of America.
There have been very explicit statements of solidarity, but beyond the statements, what are you willing to do to stand up to an ally like the United States if it goes from attempts to influence and control Greenland to something more concrete?
Well, I was in Davos. I was listening to the president when he said that he would not use force against the Kingdom of Denmark and Greenland, and a few hours later that he withdrew the threats of tariff punishment for those of us who actually said we're ready to enhance our presence in Greenland because we want to take security issues seriously. So that response has already had an effect. I am very much aware with Vivian Motzfeldt and Lars Løkke Rasmussen, there's still work to do, but we are in a different space. And kudos to them for taking this very wisely into a different space. And we rest assured that we're all with you here.
But is the US still a reliable ally? Yes or no?
So
time is tight.
What politicians don't like yes and no questions. So I mean,
I see you also
the
dodged my
US
first
is
question.
a very important ally, and we are just looking in a region where we have a significant and increasing American participation, as we want to, in exercises, in overseeing what's happening on the Russian side in the coal line in our waters. So we work very closely with the US, and there are so many Americans who are very much aware of the importance of these areas and the importance of alliance. So, and we've been allied with the US for 77 years, and there have been different presidents through these 77 years.
All right, so the answer is yes.
Yeah.
They are still a trusted ally despite all of the uncertainties. But we'll get back to it. Foreign Minister Motzfeldt, if I can come to you very quickly. I mean, you said that the time now was for negotiations and that you were seeking a diplomatic way out of the impasse with the United States. You also mentioned briefly the red lines. Has the threat of the United States to acquire Greenland one way or the other, even though President Trump has said that there will be no military means used, has it completely disappeared? Or do you still have concerns?
Oh, no, I think that the concerns is still very high. But what we stand just for 3 weeks ago and where we are today, I feel more, I see more hope in the future, and at the same time that how important it is to take this diplomatic track. And now we are in direct communication, and instead of talking to each other through media. And I think that the decision to make this working group gives us a sense of hope, and of course we'll do our best to find the best solution so we can, of course, United States has been our ally for many years and a friend, and we have been saying in many circumstances how important it is for our security. We have been friends still today and allies, but the rhetoric you have been used is not something you have been heard from your ally. So the situation has demanded many things from our side to find the right solutions, of course, with the in cooperation with Denmark. Also, making this defense agreement we did with the defense minister. At the same time that we are taking issues that we have never been taken before, talking about capabilities that we don't even have terminology on that. We don't even have word for that. So at the same time, all these tensions that came so fast, that you also need to have your people with you. And talking about low tension just for 2 years ago, and still have that in your policy as a very high priority, but seeing the reality is changing and finding the right balances, and yes, it's still very difficult.
But what is your absolute red line? Would you ever contemplate selling Greenland to the United States? And do you believe that NATO diplomacy in Davos actually helped secure Greenland's sovereignty? Are you confident that your red lines were passed on to the United States?
I believe that situation demands that we make many dialogues. We talk with each other. But I think the red lines has been very clear from our side. We stand with the Kingdom of Denmark. and our right to self-determination, territorial integrity, world order and international law, and these are very much our red lines.
So Greenland is not for sale?
Greenland is not
Not
for
today,
sale.
not in the future?
Absolutely not. And we have been there in thousands of years. To be in Greenland, you need to adapt in any changes. And these changes are something that also demands adaptation and finding the creativity that you are so good at, because to find the solution, you only have yourself to solve.
High Representative Kallas, how are you adapting? How is the EU adapting to this new Arctic environment?
Well, we are adapting, but I wanted to address something that the professor said. I absolutely agree that climate change is the biggest risk here and across the world, actually. If I go around the world and I talk to countries in Indo-Pacific, and they say that there are superpowers who say that we are not coming here to preach you about climate change, then they say you don't actually understand what life we are living, because this is our biggest risk. Now, Europe is dealing with the climate change, and it's increasingly hard because not the whole powers are there anymore. And I absolutely agree with you that the issue of trusting science is a very important issue, because also democracy is based on trust. If people can't really believe what to, or have to doubt what is right or what is wrong, and there's so much blurring of the picture, then you can't really, you can manipulate very much on the basis of you don't really know what is going on. So this is dangerous for democracy. And actually, right now, I mean, Europe is still fighting with the climate change. Yesterday, I was in the Norwegian parliament, and then was also one member who's like, Europe is weak because you are dealing with all these, climate issues, and you're trying to, put forward the policies that are making your economy weaker. Yes, but, we want our kids to live in this world as well. So that is, yes, maybe a bit, a bigger prices at this moment for us, but at the same time, I mean, there also is a life after us. So I think this is important. And so to answer your question, we are adapting to this. So before, we dealt only with the climate change, environment research when it comes to the Arctic, fisheries, of course, not to forget. But now we are also dealing with the security issues, because this is a new concern that is rising.
High Representative Kallas, good to hear you talk so much about climate change, and I think, Professor, you'll be happy that this is the one issue that every politician can agree on.
Not every politician,
Well,
come on.
Well,
Look at the news.
If we leave the United States aside,
well,
and a couple of other places.
kind of leave them aside.
Well, let's bring the US back in, as I like to go into the more sort of provocative areas where there might be less agreement. I mean, on stage earlier in your speech, you talked about how the Arctic requires more hard power, and that there was recently a radical change in the US thinking. You didn't mince your word. You stand with Greenland and the rest of it. But you did say as well in Brussels that the EU vows to hold its ground. I just wonder how. Is it not often too cautious because of its dependence on the United States for security and defense? Mark Rutte said it very bluntly.
Of course we are cautious, because there's a lot at stake. I mean, there's a full-scale war going on European continent, and there are threats coming from, economic coercion, and big challenges from China that is influencing our economies. If it is influencing our economies, it's influencing jobs and people's salaries, and then it's creating, polarization within our societies and more instability. So it's all very much interlinked. So we have to carefully, walk this road and try to adapt and work. We don't want the conflict with anybody. I mean, we want a peaceful life and prosperity for our peoples. But it is the situation where we are. And, you know, if you have such big risks, also the military threats, then you also need to work on building the defense that is acting as a deterrent, so we might not need it if the deterrence is strong enough.
And we want to come back to this, how important it is for Europe to build its own defense capability. But I do want to move, last but not least, to Christian Danielsen and ask you as well about how you assess this growing geopolitical tense